If you had told me 20 years ago I'd ever find myself agreeing with David Frum, I would have laughed in your face. This is the man who coined axis of evil in Bush's 2002 State of the Union, language that painted Iraq, Iran, and North Korea as existential threats and helped pave the way for the invasion of Iraq. Years of war in the Middle East and policies that cost countless lives. And yet, here we are. Frum is sounding the alarm about the Trump administration's authoritarian power grabs, and I can't disagree with him. That's how far off the rails things have gone, when even the architects of past disasters are warning us about the danger. You know it's bad. So what exactly has Frum so alarmed? Let me show you what he's been posting on social media. It's not about cancel culture because it's not about culture. It's about a threat of legal retaliation by a government agency for not obeying a government edict. It's state repression, not social sanction. This isn't Frum getting worked up over some abstract principle. He's responding to something very specific and very concrete. This is not about free speech absolutism. This is not a tough case. The Trump administration is commanding that broadcasters broadcast only administration-approved speech on pain of government retaliation if they don't do as commanded. Let that sink in for a moment. The federal government is threatening to retaliate against media companies if they don't broadcast what the administration wants them to broadcast. This is not bias or fairness. This is government control of media content. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but politicians complain about media coverage all the time. And you would be right. But Frum anticipates that. Try to imagine the reaction if the Biden administration had demanded that Fox fire Greg Gutfeld because he wasn't sufficiently sad about the assault on Paul Pelosi. Can you imagine the absolute meltdown if Biden had threatened Fox's broadcast license over a comedian's jokes? The outrage would have been deafening, and rightfully so. But when Trump does it, we're supposed to pretend it's normal political discourse? And here's where Frum really cuts to the heart of it. How dare you call us fascists just because our appointees threaten government retaliation against broadcast networks if their comedians don't say what we want them to say? This is the classic authoritarian move. Be outraged at being called authoritarian while actively engaging in authoritarian behavior. They want to normalize the threat while being indignant about anyone pointing out what they're doing. This isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a pattern we've been watching unfold for years. The normalization of political violence, like the attack on Paul Pelosi that Frum references, the constant attacks on democratic institutions, the weaponization of government agencies against political opponents, and now direct threats to control media content through government retaliation. When someone like David Frum, who helped build the intellectual framework for some of the most disastrous foreign policy decisions of the 21st century, is warning us about authoritarianism, we should listen. Not because Frum is suddenly some hero, but because people who have been wrong about a lot of things can recognize when democratic institutions are under direct assault. This isn't about left versus right anymore. This isn't about policy disagreements or political preferences. This is about whether we're going to have a government that respects the basic boundaries that separate democracy from authoritarianism. The fact that it's taken threats this explicit to get some people's attention shows how far we've already traveled down this road. But it's not too late to recognize what's happening and to say no. The measure of a democracy isn't whether people agree with each other, it's whether the government can threaten to shut down media outlets for not saying what it wants them to say. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. If David Frum can see it clearly enough to sound the alarm, maybe it's time the rest of us started taking this seriously too. Because once these boundaries are crossed, once these precedents are set, they don't just affect the people you disagree with, they affect everyone. And by then, it might be too late to do anything about it. Please make sure you're subscribed and following along for more.